All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Climate Action Homes YouTube. Today, we're talking about Solar 102, Electrify Everything, the coming revolution. And I just really want to thank you for doing what all you do and thinking about how we together can take care of our beautiful home, sweet home, whether you're a realtor or any anything that you're doing. This is the real home that we're caring about. So I just invite you to take a deep breath and remember somehow we can actually forget this. So I invite you to start here and then we'll dive in. I do a series of workshops targeted toward real estate, but really for anybody, and have it as a kind of ongoing series. So the first two, Solar 101, top 10 tips for buying and selling homes with solar. And then the one we're doing today, Solar 102, Electrify Everything. And then the next two are the Solar 201, how to become a solar ambassador, and then Solar 202, how to grow your real estate business with solar. And then I also do something monthly just for anybody that's a Solar Sunday for 5 ways to rock your world with solar. So the most exciting thing I think about solar is it's a way that everybody can get involved, whether you refer people, you do it on your own home, you learn about it, you start a business as a solar consultant. There's so many ways to make a big impact with solar. So that's what that's all about. A little bit about me. I've been obsessing about home energy as long as I can remember, starting back when I was 10 years old and my dad was a petroleum engineer and I was plotting oil and gas production curves for him and seeing how they all went to zero. After not too many years, we extrapolated that out. And that really got me interested in renewable energy. And this is what I've been working on my entire life. I'm so excited about that. And really excited a little bit later, we're going to be hearing from Jillian Di Filippo. She's with Elephant Energy, which is one of the companies that's out there helping people electrify their homes. So what is electrifying everything? The definition is really just that, taking everything that we're currently using fossil fuels for and instead figuring out a way to change that use and power it with clean, renewable fuel. And this is the way to take a big step. We clean the electric grid, electrify all vehicles, electrify all fossil fuel uses in our buildings from space heating to cooking. And this is a graphic from Rewiring America that shows when we're talking about electrifying our home, where is that happening in our home? Like, where are all the little parts and that we need to look? And so it's things like, instead of a gas furnace, having a heat pump for your space heating and cooling. Instead of a gas clothes dryer, having an electric clothes dryer or a heat pump clothes dryer, heat pump water heater. Maybe you use rooftop panels like Chris and I help people do, or maybe you hook up to community solar like Julie helps people with. So either way, as you go through your home, everything that's using fossil fuels, you convert that over and power it with clean energy. And this is just another way to another view of, but I like that this also includes weatherization. So if you're putting in new equipment to heat and cool your home, but you've got a bunch of leaks, it's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. You might as well plug the holes in your bucket if you're getting ready to buy something new to fill that with. Some of the resources that are great for diving in are Rewiring America, Energy Innovation. There's a Beneficial Electric League of Colorado. There's also in other locations, Love Electric, a Citizens Climate League, Climate Reality Project. Like, I'm a climate reality leader, and that's one of the things we're getting trained on is, instead of teaching people about climate change, let's teach them about the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's lots of different ways you can learn about it and be part of the solution. Rewiring America is an awesome resource we're going to look at a couple of those real quick here. This Electrify Home Guide, you can just download the entire guide. But I thought that this electrification planning chart was really handy. And in a minute, we're going to be talking about how you don't have to do this all yourself. But this kind of thing really gives you the terminology so that you can start understanding, okay, what does it really mean to electrify everything? Here's all these same topics that we talked about, but with more details of what's the lifetime of those. And here's a great kind of step. Here's something you can just do now. You can purchase renewable electricity. You can check out your electrical service. You can get a home energy audit. So I think this is a great resource at Rewiring America, that electrification planning chart. And then we have another thing that you'll see at the top of their website here that says, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it says IRA savings calculator. And this is another way, all these tools are really great to get people thinking like, hey, there is money out there. I don't know how to get it all, but there is definitely something here. So I just put in a sample for Denver, somebody of 60,000 income, 3 people, and this is showing a total of $19,000 worth of incentives. Of course, there's a lot of asterisks, a lot of details with this, but to understand that first, the tax credits you'll notice they're all available now. And then the electrification rebates are going to be available later in 2023. But that is only really that's only part of the story, because that's just what we're talking about from the Inflation Reduction Act and on the federal level. But I guess I'll get to that in a minute. But I also wanted to just let you know there's a few other things if you're wanting to dive in to learn more about this. I just listened to this Electrify book by Saul Griffith on Audible, which was awesome. It really gave me some interesting ideas of ways to think about this. The Big Fix, I haven't read that yet. Electrify This is the podcast from Energy Innovation. And my podcast, Climate Action Home. This is something I've got already discussion with Christine Brinker of how she went with the heat pump, and just lots of different folks on there. And we have more coming. So why do we even care about this? What is all this stuff about electrification? Why is this so important? And this picture right here was taken in 1968. It's called Earthrise, but it was as the Apollo 8 astronauts were circling the moon. It came over and saw in this mass, the moon looks pretty dead. Everything else just looks black. But here's this floating ball of life. And it really struck them. And when we see this blue marble, see it surrounded by just what looks like an infinite amount of space, it's hard to really understand that what we're doing with putting carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, how could that even really make that big of a difference? But the greenhouse effect is that our atmosphere is holding more of that heat in than it's releasing. And when we look at it from this angle, we see that it's not really this huge amount of blackness that we're concerned about. It's this tiny little space along the edge of our surface that is what is protecting us, what's keeping that floating ball of life alive. It's a pretty incredible thing. And so the diameter of the Earth is 8,000 miles, but how thick is our atmosphere actually? It's really just 60 miles thick. And that means if somehow you could hop in your car and just drive straight up an hour, then you'd be in space. You'd be out of that protective layer. And it's the same thing if Earth was the size of a basketball and we covered it with a thin film like saran wrap, that's that same kind of ratio. And that's why it's so critical that us floating out in space, we have this very thin layer that's protecting us. And yet the amount of carbon dioxide that we've been dumping into that has been changing the temperature. And we can see this data from 1880 all the way through 2020. And NASA is a great reference I think part of our job is to help people understand how that climate change is real, that it's happening, and that it's something that we can really understand. And that's what this NASA Scientific Visualization Studio does. So in 30 seconds, it's going to run through the data here between 1880 and 2020, showing if it's blue, it's colder than the average of that time period. And as it gets yellow, orange, and red, it's colder. You can keep track of it and see when you were born and see the difference from that time. So if you're ever doing a presentation, I think this is a really nice little tool to show people, because, the changes year to year are incremental and things go back and forth. We can really see the change pretty clearly. So the IPCC report that came out March 20th, 2023 had this press release: urgent climate action can secure a livable future. That is just like such a dire prediction, and saying there's multiple feasible and effective options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to adapt, and they're available now. So that's the good news, right? And part of this report is saying, I'm not going to read all of this. That's what that headline is based on. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health. There's a rapidly closing window of opportunity. And what we do now, the choices and actions implemented in this decade will have impacts now and for thousands of years. We have a superhero opportunity right now that really, when we dive in, when we do something, it is going to have these beneficial ripple effects for thousands of years. The report, that 2023 IPCC report that came out, is 8,000 pages long. And so it's difficult to summarize, but that's what World Resource Institute did, was said, here's all the ways that we're seeing global warming is already underway. Here's the top 10 things that we can do to mitigate climate change. And I think it's interesting that the top 3: retire coal plants, invest in clean energy and efficiency, retrofit and decarbonize buildings. Those top 3 things is all what we're talking about right now with going solar, electrifying your buildings. But one of the big things is this paradigm shift that I feel as responsible for this as anybody. That my early work, I wanted to do renewables immediately, but it wasn't, I don't know if it was cost effective or not, but we just weren't doing it. So I was doing a lot more energy efficiency work, like getting people to go from a gas water heater to a tankless water heater. You're reducing the amount of gas it's using. But if we need to stop burning fossil fuels altogether, this kind of shift isn't going to get us there anymore. For our current thing of focusing on our carbon emissions, we need to do that 100% adoption that we're talking about earlier. So when governments are looking at this, oh my gosh, we really need to do something about climate change, the first thing that they do is set goals for greenhouse gas emissions. So these are set at global, country, state, city. And I'm just going to kind of cruise through here, but you can see that there's goals for 2030, which is 7 years from now. That's like nothing. And goals for 2050. That was global. Now at the US level, again, 50% by 2030, 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, net zero 2050. And then it just ripples down. Colorado has its own goals, and then Denver has its own goals. And so part of this, what happens is that as these goals are being set, this is now impacting the rebates, the energy codes, the policies at the city level. And when I was working in real estate, I think a lot of we weren't even talking about any of this. And so to understand in one of my other workshops in 101, I talk about how many people are concerned about climate change. And it's something like 65% in the US are either concerned or alarmed. And that they know this stuff is happening. They're seeing their kids are concerned about it. The cities, state, local, everyone is working on it. And so it's in our best interest to have these kinds of conversations. And even if you're a big lover of gas cooktops, this is a catching point that has stopped some cities from actually going with all electric in their new codes is people being having this love affair with gas cooktops. And this is something that we can be talking with people about. There's a great article by Consumer Reports. Part of what I try to do is find things that are not controversial. When a report comes out from a energy efficiency nonprofit like RMI, they might say, of course you're going to see that because that's what you want. So it's good to find other sources that are talking about this, and Scientific American, that nitrogen oxide has health risks. And in addition, I think something most people don't understand is the natural gas leaks from stoves, even when it's off. So if that is a sticking point for people, if their gas cooktop is an issue, that's something else that we can be sharing with them. And I got something like this, which is this little portable induction cooktop for myself to try out. We're talking about less than $100 to be able to have a way to cook with electric. As I was starting to say earlier, there's so many rebates and incentives out there to help people make all these investments. There's the federal rebates. There's rebates like Xcel Energy has rebates for heat pumps and electric panels, and the state government is helping implement those federal impact, or the state government is the avenue for the Inflation Reduction Act rebates. The local government, there's grants, there's mandates coming with energy codes. We already looked at the Rewiring America. And at the Denver Office of Climate Action, Sustainability and Resilience, there's a nice little chart that shows, okay, here's what you get from Excel. Here's what you get from Denver. Here's if it's low income, medium income, high income. The great news is there is a lot out there. And here's just like a snippet of that. There's not really bad news about this, but the reality is it's pretty complicated. And so there's lots of the rebates are trying to pile on each other, making it so that Excel is contributing something, Denver is contributing something, the state of Colorado has something, and that together it makes it easier and easier for people to go ahead and make these kinds of changes. And especially for medium and low income folks, there are even higher rebates. So that's part of the environmental justice, the climate justice idea. So how the heck are you going to coordinate all of this, finding all the qualified contractors and figuring out what all these rebates apply, what order you should be doing them in? Because for Denver in particular, if you do solar before you do a heat pump, then you can't get one of the rebates. So if you do a heat pump and then do solar, you are able to. So it's not only just figuring out all the different rebates, but what order to do the different upgrades in. So here's a couple ideas. One is start with an energy audit, and your local utility is likely to have a free energy audit or something very low cost. And so that's a great place to get started. A lot of times that can happen within a week or so. And they'll give you some basic ideas and what rebates, and give you a qualified list of contractors. But there's also, like the city of Denver has their qualified contractors list. And then there's something called Electrification Consultants. All these things, every time that a person starts to freak out, that's really a business opportunity, right? If somebody wants to do something, but they don't know how. And so what an electrification consultant can do is take someone, okay, calm down. It's okay. Do an assessment, create an electrification plan, coordinate all the rebates and the incentives, and act as a general contractor to manage all those different contractors. So here's a few of them. In Colorado, there's Helio, Elephant Energy, and a new one, Zero Homes. And with that, I want to turn it over to Jillian. Jillian was nice enough from Elephant Energy to join us. So I super appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Joan. I'm really happy to be here and to chat more about home electrification with all of you. I'm gonna go around a little bit first and why our co-founders started this business in the first place and why this is important work. And I think Joan did a really good job speaking to that already, but just to show it from a little bit of a different perspective, both of our co-founders were pretty involved in the kind of tech 1.0 and have been in climate for a while. And they're old friends. They came to this consensus together that they really believe that in order to achieve net zero by 2050, there are 4 things we need to accomplish in the course of the next 10 years. They're pretty straightforward. It's deploy more wind and solar, manage the volatility of those renewable energy sources, transition all new vehicle sales to electric vehicles, and transition 100% of new building appliances to electric. So when they were thinking about starting a company together, it was particularly interesting. And it was particularly interesting because no one was really doing this work of building electrification specifically. Solar had obviously been more developed. There are folks working on these other things, EVs. But with building electrification and home electrification in particular, we actually had all of the different technologies we needed, the heat pumps, the induction stoves, heat pump water heaters, all that equipment existed, but the actual process of figuring out how to get that equipment installed in your home was really challenging. So that's what we've really built Elephant Energy around, is being your trusted partner in home electrification to figure out what we were talking about earlier of what should I do? How should I do it? In what order? How do I get the rebates? How do I get the incentives? So we really aim to be this all-in-one form to make this process as easy as possible for folks and remove as much friction as possible for folks so that we can do this process of number 4, as well as retrofits, not just rebuilding appliances, but also retrofits as quickly and efficiently as possible and get folks excited about it. The point being with the 4 things is these are really like the foundational things that we need to do. And folks are working on all kinds of other like super important and interesting innovation as well, to the tune of green hydrogen and carbon capture and sequestration. And those are all great, but those are really the icing on the cake. First, we need to do those other 4 things. And so we're focusing on number 4 and just making it easy for folks to electrify their homes. And then just to hammer this point home for you guys, 37% of our US carbon emissions produced every year come from decisions that folks like you and I make around the kitchen table. So how do we heat our home? How do we cool our home? How do we cook in our home? And what cars do we drive? Really big chunk of the pie that we as consumers have control over transitioning to renewable energy sources. And we do have the opportunity to play a really big role in that energy transition here. And like I said, we have the tools to do it today. We have all the home electrification things that I spoke about earlier, as well as the electric bills and lawn equipment and all these things that over time we will transition to electric, which is super exciting. People electrify for different reasons. I would say a lot of the folks that we talk to right now are really focused on reducing carbon emissions, and they're electrifying from a perspective, which is awesome. And that's why we started this business. So we're glad to see it. But other reasons that people may choose to electrify, and everyone's goals and priorities for electrification look a little bit different. I won't talk more about the climate lens, but there's also an element of home comfort that comes along with electrification. And what does that mean? Heat pumps are more comfortable than your traditional furnace. They have a consistent, continuous cycle that it just runs continuously a little bit versus like a furnace. The way that works, you've all probably experienced this before, is like blasts on for 2 minutes, really hot, and then it turns off for an hour, and then it blasts on and it turns off. So, and there are also like specific designs and things that we have done with customers to help them figure out, okay, you have this room or area of your home that's super cold and drafty, or like how can we figure out how to actually make your home better and more comfortable using this electric technology? So that's a driver for some folks. Saving money is also a driver. Transitioning to electric can save you money here in Colorado and other places as well, even more amplified if you partner that together with solar. Something that I think is particularly interesting for realtors is that electrifying can actually increase your home's value as these upgrades become more and more sought after by folks who are purchasing. So Zillow did a study. They found that installing on HVAC in your home can increase your home value by about 4 to 7%. Significant. And then, last but not least, Joan mentioned this a little bit earlier. There's this element that just like combusting fossil fuels in our homes, probably not the best thing for our health or for our safety. It's like a little archaic. It's a little caveman. Time to move on from that. And the studies show that it can contribute to childhood asthma, all these different things, and they're better. So I like to say it's a win on multiple dimensions to transition to a modern electric, but it's important to recognize that everyone's motivations are a little bit different for doing this work. So yes, we are on a mission to accelerate the end of fossil fuel use by electrifying everything starting. And we have this vision, at least speaking about energy, that not only is an important climate perspective, but it's actually just a better quality of life to live in a modern electric. And we're excited to help folks transition over to that. It's really important to us to build this kind of national brand that's helping to bring light to the importance of home electrification, make it exciting for folks, and educate on all the stuff that we just talked about on the previous slide. And then our other kind of like customer is not only the homeowner, but it's the contractor. So we work with a network of vetted contractors who install our projects, and our goal is to make their lives as easy as possible by providing a set of software, awesome projects for them to work on that are pre-scoped and help them to grow their businesses as well. In Colorado, we've done honestly more than 125 homes. This slide is outdated that we've electrified. Last year in 2022, we were the second largest installer of water heaters here in Colorado. We're growing at a pretty fast clip of 20% over a month. So definitely seeing residents of this kind of concierge home electrification model. I think we specifically worried about making it as easy as possible is really resonating with the customers that we're working with so far. We are a one-stop shop for home electrification. Like I mentioned, we make it easy to upgrade. Whether you want to do that all at once, we can help you out. And whether you want to do it over time too, over the course of 3, 5, 10 years, we can help make that plan, which we call your Electrification Roadmap, so that you can be sure that you're doing things in an order that makes sense for what you want to do next. And I think that's something you don't always get traditional. But three main pieces to our process, one being education and planning. Like I mentioned, the road mapping piece of this work. The second being end-to-end project management. We at Element Energy, for the customers that we work with, are the sole point of contact for our customers. There's only one contract that you sign. It's with us. We're the people you call if anything goes wrong, either during your project or down the line. We're there for you for maintenance. And then we manage all of the contractor installation pieces. We have an on-site project manager. So essentially, you're getting a second pair of eyes on anything that's installed in your home to make sure it's done correctly and right the first time, which is something that our customers really value. And then lastly, when your project's over, your relationship with us isn't. We're really there with you for the long run. We have actually really cool technology that we install on our system so that we can monitor that they're performing correctly, and it alerts us if there's any issues so we can go and troubleshoot them. And then we offer maintenance plans as well to help our customers keep their systems in shape. So that's just a little bit about us and how we work. And I spoke about this a little bit before, but our tool, your Electrification Roadmap, is basically a quiz on our website that you can go in and put in a bunch of information about your home, your goals, the age of your appliances, and then we have a series of logic that helps to determine, like, here's where we think you should start your journey, right? Here's what we think it makes sense to do first. Here's why. And then here are the different steps that you might consider down the road. And that's usually helpful for folks because most people aren't doing all this work in 1 year. It's expensive to fully electrify. So the screenshots here are our first version that we launched of this tool last November, I want to say. But we're actually launching a pretty snazzy second version of this tool in early July, which I'm really excited about. That's even more detailed, has more information, has a bit more sophisticated logic as well in terms of the recommendation engine. So really excited to go live with that. That will be available to folks in zip codes all over the country, not just in Colorado and Massachusetts where we operate right now, really just broadly. That could be a helpful for folks looking to electrify in any area of the US. Then, so why our model works. Basically, we've put a lot of work into building this easy button for helping folks to manage these projects. Normally, the question you get from homeowners after we explain what I explained to you all already is like, okay, that sounds great, but it must be really expensive because you're adding in an additional management layer, right? Here and ourselves. And the reason that we're able to do that is threefold. It's on the right-hand side of the screen here. But basically, a couple different things. One, within our work of vetted contractors, we have multiple partners within every type of trade. So we have like multiple electricians and multiple HVAC, multiple plumbers that we work with. So there's this internal RFP process that helps us to keep prices down for our customers who are getting pricing from multiple contractors and basically like bidding it out on your behalf and then helping to price for your project. The second piece of that is we source and procure all of the equipment for the customers that we work with, which because we're increasingly larger and have direct OEM relationships, we're able to get economies of scale and the sourcing, which helps us keep our prices down. And then lastly, we're building technology that makes this process easier and simpler and allows us to drive prices down. What we've seen so far is that we're actually straight down the fairway in Colorado with other contractors, but we like to think that we offer way more price, which is just making it easier for homeowners. So that's how the model works. Not all heat pumps are created equal. There are heat pumps and then there are cold climate. And we at Elephant Energy typically install cold climate heat pumps because we work. And I think it's unfortunate some folks have had not so great experiences with pumps because they haven't been sized appropriately to their home, or they haven't actually gotten this technology that's suitable for climate. And then if the sizing of the heat pump or the type of the heat pump is off, then like there are struggles, right? You have to be able to appropriate heat or to the desired temperature. So it's something we're super cognizant of. Elephant, we do all of our system designs in-house. We have a methodology that we've created for sizing that takes the last 12 months of the customer's gas usage and figures out what's the appropriate heating load for the home at different points of time within the year. And then we model based on that highest heating load possible. So you can look at the bottom of the chart here, and this is actual data that we have from the very, very cold period of time that we had last December here in Colorado, where we had some quite negative temperatures from was 12/21, 12/24 of 2022. We were hitting these -13, -8 temperatures, and we can see how demanding the heating loads are on those days. And because we have this technology that actually collects data points from all of our customer systems, it see two things. What is the temperature of the air being put out by our systems, as well as what is the temperature that's being maintained. We are able to put together this chart and see, okay, actually, our whole heat pump fleet is being able to maintain a mid to high 60s temperature within our customers this past December during these coldest days, which gave us a lot of confidence in our sizing methodology that we're applying. So we're learning, but so far we've had really great success with the methodology that we've put forward, and our customers were really happy with how their heat pumps performed this past December. We had a couple of quick appendix pages here just in terms of how heat pumps work. This is probably baseline knowledge, but just to cover this super quickly. Basically, heat pumps go both directions. They both heat and the way that they do that and the way that they do it more efficiently is that they actually remove heat that's in the air instead of producing like a furnace. So like a furnace is like combusting fossil fuels to produce heat, way less efficient than a heat pump. Pump is 3 times more efficient than a furnace because what it can do is in the winter, for example, it can extract heat that's in the outside air. Just wild because you would think that there isn't heat in the outside air in the winter, but there is. And the heat pump's able to take that heat and suck it inside your home and use that for purposes. And then in the summer, it does the opposite, where it sucks the heat from inside the home. So that is how they work. We like to use this like super simple savings scenario to show our customers what they can expect in terms of pricing for a heat pump system and average scenario. So the average cost of a cold climate heat pump before incentives is just over $20,000. Had an insignificant amount of money, about the same amount of getting like a great furnace and air conditioner into your home, but having those both in place at the same time. But the cool thing is that you get this nice pancaking stack of rebates and incentives that help to defray that upfront cost. So from Excel, from City of Denver Climate Action Program, from the Inflation Reduction Act, and then from the state equipment credit in Colorado, and soon to be, I think, some additional incentives here in Colorado too, which will be great. In an average scenario, these incentives total around $9,000 right now, and they defray your costs down to just shy of $1,000. So we also have financing options available too here in Colorado, which is really helpful. So hopefully that gives a sense of what we're talking about in terms of pricing for average system here in the Denver area. I'm going to pause there. And let's flip to questions. I know we're going to go on here. If that works for you, Joan.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Do you pretty much just stick with the cold climate heat pumps exclusively?
Primarily, yes. And Joan, a lot of this work shakes out of like that math I was talking about earlier in terms of sizing the heating demand for your specific home using your gas bills. So yeah, if we're doing solar placement, then yes, cold climate for the climate that we're in, and altitude makes it even harder for the heat pumps to work. It's a bit more challenging. So even more important to go with the altitude, I think. As far as dual fuel, so like the chart that I showed you earlier, none of these systems are dual fuel, and they all performed awesomely during the cold snap. So we really don't feel like dual fuel is necessary with the caliber of technology that we now have in pumps, coupled with appropriate sizing for your home. About half of our systems do have that electric resistance heat strip. We usually recommend that in two scenarios. Like one, again, it goes back to this math that we walk every customer through, like the particular sizing for their home. Your home's an edge case where you could get like a certain size heat pump, but maybe it's not quite enough for the coldest days of the year. Then we would say, yes, maybe you should consider go with a smaller heat pump, but also get resistance heating just in case. Or if you're someone who says, I always need it to be 70 degrees, even if it's negative 13, right? I don't want it to ever dip below 69 or 70. 66 or 65 is unacceptable for what I want. Then maybe also it's in your best interest, right, to get that resistance heating. So some of it also just has to do with like personal preference. And that's what we walk folks through in terms of the backup heating. We've done a few dual fuel systems, generally in situations where someone has a really new furnace. So we don't do it for furnaces that are over 5 years old. But if it's under 5 years old and it's really new, just from a lifespan perspective, it can make sense, but it's not the majority of the work that we do because we really don't feel that it's necessary to improve performance. And the one last thing I'll add, because I know this was a question I think you said, Julie, around proactive replacement. Why does it matter? Why is it important? The analogy that we use is probably wouldn't drive your car until the hubcap fell off on I-70. But that's how we treat our heating and cooling system. They're tucked away in a closet. It's easier to ignore. But where we are right now with electrification and you have an emergency replacement, you're probably not going to be able to. So if that's what you want, it's important to make a proactive plan to replace when your equipment is of age. We're not advocating for anyone to replace. It's still okay to you want your equipment to have lived a good life, but when it's time, make a proactive plan, and that's a part of this electrification road process is taking stock of how old everything in your home is and making a plan such that when the time comes, you're not stuck with what's on the truck because it's Jan 2nd and you need a furnace replacement ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And it also is that, again, a lot of people aren't aware that there is another option. They've forever been just replacing one gas furnace with the next. So yeah, it does take a lot of education. I wanted to just say a couple other things as this idea of electrifying everything. Those of us who really care about the planet and consider ourselves nature lovers, the idea like electrify everything it sounds very industrial, maybe. So this idea of electrifying everything, this is really just the start or just one component of redefining our relationship with the planet and how we take care of it. There's a lot of indication that we can't just replace them all with electric vehicles and still have everything work. There's the amount of rubber, the amount of road service. There's a lot of other issues that come up. And just the thing of having that connection to nature that I think has really been lost with our kids and different folks. So this electrify everything is not a call to be robots. It's a call to really be understanding what does our planet need and be responsive and taking action. And so the electrify is one part, but it's not the be all end all of what we need to do with biodiversity and everything else. For those people who are like, electrify, that doesn't sound very romantic, very amazing. But yeah, it's just part of what we're doing to really care for our fragile planet floating out here in the middle of space. So with that, I just want to thank you so much, Jillian, for hopping on here and for telling us about what Elephant Energy is doing to help people navigate through their electrification journey. And thanks also everybody who hopped on and had questions. And yeah, I have these workshops. I'm all about education. If there's anything that I can do, any group that you know of that I can be speaking to, I would love to do all of that. So thank you everybody for joining and hope to see you on the next episode of Climate Action Homes.